Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab Podcast, a podcast that helps men over 40 with their divorce recovery by presenting guests with different and special superpowers. We try to find some of the out-of-the-box solutions to some of your problems. Welcome to the show, Larry Waldman. He's a licensed clinical forensic psychologist that's been practicing for over 45 years. That's a long time. He has too much education, books, and certifications to list here, but let's just say he's a big baller in his field. Welcome, Larry. Tell us a little about yourself. I got some questions for you. Welcome to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast with the premise of connecting men over 40 with the tools and community to thrive in their divorce recovery either before, during, or after a divorce.
Well, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I am semi-retired. I no longer am actively in practice. I retired after about 45 years in the field. And the last 15, 20 years of my practice, I worked more or less forensically in family law, personal injury, estate planning, stuff like that. So I saw it from the legal end as well as the therapeutic end, and so on. I've done some writing. In fact, I have 2 books that pertain to this particular topic. The first one, in fact, I've got it right here, is How Come I Love Him But Can't Live with Him? How to Make Your Relationship Better. And this one, and that one came out, early 90s. This one came out about 5 years ago, entitled Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex.
I love that title. I love that. I use that sentence all the time.
Right. Yeah. Because it's true. I get a lot of my titles from my patients often, and that both of those came up during sessions. I've been married, like I like to say, I've been happily married 40 years. Unfortunately, we've been together 53, but no, that's not true. No, we've been married 53 years old. And now that I'm semi-retired, I still write, speak, teach, coach, do podcasts. I'm also a certified trainer as well as a certified yoga instructor. So the yoga fits well with what I used to do, and so on, with meditation and such. So I do a fair amount of that, and I enjoy these kinds of podcasts and getting the word out. People need this information.
How has your 45 years of experience as a psychologist shaped your understanding of divorce recovery?
Well, it certainly has affected mine. You can't do this kind of work and so forth without taking on some of it, and so on. And it makes me, it has made me realize, how important it is. I mean, you can be terribly successful, let's say, in whatever business you might be in. And I've seen lots of guys like that. But when they come home, they're miserable. And that doesn't make for a good life. So I think, I should say, your primary relationship with your partner is one of the most important things in your world, frankly. And without that, the world looks pretty dark and gloomy. Yet, of course, unfortunately, what a lot of us do, and sometimes after a hard day, I have to admit, I probably been guilty of that as myself. We come home and use our marriage as a dump. And so we're frustrated and so on and whatever, and we end up dumping on our partner. No, we can't do that. We have to treat this relationship as important as it is, and that's one of the things I certainly have learned. Aside from my professional training, my experience with guys who've been struggling with their own relationships. And then, of course, with the divorce rate as high as it is, then guys think that, all right, I'm going to get out of here and find somebody else. Well, the grass, as the old saying is, the grass is usually greener right near the outhouse, but it isn't always. So many times what needs to be done, as we were talking about while we were chatting, is to get help, address the issues, work on it. And there are lots of people out there that can help you do that.
So I was asking, what inspired you to write Love Your Child More Than Hate You Ex? And how did the principles in the book help divorced men navigate co-parenting?
Well, I wrote the book because, unfortunately, I was seeing a lot of that. Now, obviously, by working with the family court system, I was obviously selectively working with couples that were having a hard time with their divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, as we're all human, as it happens, a lot of these couples were angry, and by the time you reach this point, you've pretty much said everything you can possibly say, negatively to each other. You've heard it all before, and it doesn't have much impact. But if you can perhaps punish in your mind your ex or soon to be ex with withholding the kids, for instance, well, now you're talking, and that's what that happens, unfortunately. The data suggests about 15 to 20% of divorces are pretty acrimonious. And this is what happens. The poor kids get caught up in this meat grinder, if you will. Their worlds get turned upside down. The person they thought was the best dad in the world now are being told differently, and vice versa. Sometimes the person who they thought was the best mom in the world, now again they're hearing other things and so on. So who are they supposed to trust? What are they supposed to believe? And so on. And of course, this shakes the very foundation of their lives. They didn't ask for it.
Nope.
Most the kids didn't ask for the divorce. They didn't even know that things were that bad. Besides which, what do they compare it to? How many marriages do they know about? Of course, they've only lived in one. So as far as they're concerned, that was the best marriage possible. And then all of a sudden it breaks up. And then sometimes, of course, in addition to this alienation that sometimes occurs, then parents, wanting comfort and company and so on, bring in somebody else, often too quickly. And suddenly the kids are, oh, is this my next daddy? Or is this my next mommy? And so on. And they kind of get the impression like relationships are disposable. You can throw one away and pull out another one, and so on. And there is substantial data that suggests that kids who come through ugly divorces are more inclined to have one themselves.
Wow. I am a second generation divorcee. What's that term? Is there a term? Yeah, I'm second generation, and quite a few of my friends are second generation. So you were talking about the using the kids as pawns, things like that. I don't know about Arizona, but in Colorado, it's mandatory to take a parenting class. So you sit in this room in the county building and they show this civil defense 1950s film on how not to use the kids as pawns. And even though they show that video and you have to go to the class, people still do it.
Oh yeah, sure. While I was working with the family courts, I was also what is called a parenting coordinator. I would get assigned by a judge who saw this couple as being unworkable, if you will, and I was foisted upon this couple. They had to pay for it too,
Mm.
but it was my job to get them to, or at least help them cooperate, and so on, with at least to learn to communicate. And I'm not going to tell you that I was successful in all cases, because in some cases it was impossible. But there were a number of cases where people would finally understand that what they're doing to their kids, not to mention what they're doing to themselves, and so on, with all that anger and hate and so on. I remember I had a professor long time ago say, holding on to anger or a grudge is like taking poison and hoping the other person dies.
It doesn't happen. How does your background in yoga and fitness intersect with mental health and divorce recovery? How does that all kind of intertwine?
Well, I've been into physical fitness since I was an early teen. And so I've been doing that now for, oh my gosh, better than 60 years, really. But the yoga came about 15 or so years ago. And I was, working out regularly at my gym. And there was a yoga instructor there. Her name was Lisa. And she also would work out occasionally in the gym, with the weights and so on, and we would talk. She was also a therapist, but who kind of failed at that, which is interesting because obviously it's one of the topics I talk about is successful practice development.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lot to talk about, and she kept saying, "Come on, Larry, let's let me help you get into doing some yoga. I mean, you're doing the strength thing. That's good. You're doing the aerobic thing. That's good. But what about flexibility? And what about balance? And how about some meditation and so on?" I went, I don't know. That sounds. Anyhow, finally, I relented. And it didn't take more than a session or two for me to realize, wow, this is really a nice adjunct, to what else I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it completes as far as I'm concerned, the physical fitness regimen. Plus, of course, the meditation is wonderful as well. To just take a minute or two every day, and just kind of focus, relax, just let it be, stay in the present, and so on. So it was a nice mix, and I started about 5 years ago. Actually, started to teach at my condos. So the tenants in the condo were taking the classes and so on. And then about 2 years ago, I decided, might as well get certified. I'm a certified trainer, so all right, fine. And so I finished that certification now about 8, 9 months ago. I was the only guy in the graduation class, and the next youngest person below me was 25 years younger than I was.
Wow.
And so on. So yeah, I just turned 78.
Okay. So, in your experience, what are some of the biggest emotional challenges that men over 40 face after divorce, and how can they overcome them?
Well, first off, even if you've asked for a divorce, if you are the dumper, if you will, as opposed to the
Hmm.
dumpee, you're feeling a loss and you're feeling rejection. Someone that you once loved and cared for doesn't feel the same way anymore about you, and that's a hard pill to swallow. That's difficult. And so what a lot of people do and so forth is they tend to drink too much. They try to stuff those feelings, maybe eat too much, and so on. And that certainly is not useful. The other thing that happens way too often is that they immediately seek a new partner. We see it all the time. Well, this is a partnered this is a partnered world.
Yep.
You don't go to a night. Typically, you don't go out to a nice restaurant by yourself. You don't go to the movies too often by yourself. Okay, you don't take a vacation. You can, of course, but you typically don't by yourself.
Correct.
So there's an amazing amount of pressure out there to be coupled, to be paired, and so when you break up an exclusive relationship, especially one that's existed for quite a while, you feel at a loss.
Yep.
As I said, you feel rejected. And what we do, and this is men do it, and women, is rush into a new relationship very quickly. In fact, I remember I was at a workshop several years back, shortly before I retired, and a judge, a marital judge, was speaking, and he said it was his experience that in the majority of the time, people were coming in to sign the final divorce decree. They already had a new partner at their arm. And see, that's too fast. That's too fast. You haven't healed. There's a healing process. Right?
So what's a time? What's not too fast? That's
A
the
year,
question.
a year. Well, but it's not a year of just sitting on your hands. No, it's a year of reflection. I would argue, if you really, if you want the whole boat, I at least a good portion of that time getting into treatment, getting into therapy. Why did this happen? You know, as I said, I did this stuff for close to a half century, and saw dozens upon dozens of people who were divorced and so forth, and never once did I hear anyone ever say, I got divorced, and looking back, I realized, I played a significant role in that. It never happens. Okay?
Nobody owns up to it.
Right. Okay. So you have this belief it's all her fault. It's all his fault. It's the mother-in-law. It's whatever. Well, yes, I'm not saying that can't be partially true, but there is certainly some role that
Hmm.
you play in it. Even if, frankly, if there's some abuse involved, and of course you certainly don't have to put up with that. But many times, it's just, well, you allowed it. You didn't walk out. You didn't accept it. You accepted
Hmm.
it. So on. So, regardless of the situation, part of the healing is to acknowledge what role you've played, in this, because I can guarantee you, okay, if you don't do that, what is likely to happen is you're going to find a new partner who looks like, Isn't that interesting? I'm sure you've seen it before.
Oh
Who
yeah.
looks like your previous partner
Yep.
and acts like your previous partner. And guess what? You're going to behave the same like you did in the first relationship. And here we go. Number two is doomed. The divorce rate for first marriages in this country runs between 45 and 50%. And the majority of them occur in the first 5 years. Okay? The divorce rate for second marriages is 2/3, 65 to 65% of the time. The second marriage doesn't stick.
What about third?
Oh well, well, and can you imagine? I mean, on top of that, I mean, look, what are the reasons for divorce? Money, sex, kids, and in-laws. Okay, those are the four major reasons that couples struggle. Okay, there are others, of course, but those are the big four.
Top four.
Now, when you get divorced, what happens? Okay, money. Oh my God, there's a huge problem. Sex. Well, okay, now you got someone else is in your bed and so on. In-laws. Well, here's the other thing. You still have those first in-laws. Those first in-laws are grandparents to those kids you sired in that first
Yep.
relationship. Okay, and so even though you're with a new person, okay, who may have kids elsewhere, with those ex-in-laws now, and so forth, you still have to deal with them. I've said, many times that with some of these families, you need a computer to determine, who goes where during Thanksgiving,
Yep.
and where do the kids go? I mean, it's crazy.
Uh,
So rushing into a new relationship is destined to fail. Destined. I accused one person. I remember some time back. I said, you spent more time, vetting your next iPhone than you did your next partner. I mean, there's things you want to look at.
yep.
I mean, in fact, I even how do they manage money? How do they handle anger? How do they handle disappointment? How willing are they to accommodate and compromise? I mean, there's so many things. What are their moral views and things of that nature? Those are things you really. And by the way, look at their family. Go go to dinner. Go to have dinner with his or her parents and see what's going on. Look at that relationship, because let's face it, how did we learn about what a marriage is when we were kids? Did we read a book on marital therapy or marriage? No.
Nope.
What we did is look at our folks.
Yep. One of the things I realized that when I was vetting a new person was go to dinner and see how they treat wait staff. That was a big,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it was simple
Sure.
and big.
Yes. Sure. Yeah. Exactly. That's one. And so on. Yeah. I suggest that you get their credit rating. You look at have them get a credit rating and show you. I think that says a lot.
Wow.
Um, I mean, there's things that and again, look at their parents and so forth.
Let's shift gears here. How can men
Sure.
rebuild their self-esteem and sense of identity after divorce? Self-esteem and sense of identity are huge with men. How can they rebuild that? Because it gets torn down.
Absolutely. That's what we were just talking about. You've been rejected. All right. So one, of course, is again to grow, to understand why this happened, okay? And to understand your role in it. That's growth. And then work on those areas that you applied into that relationship, and correct them, fix them, and so on. If you tend to fly off the handle and so forth, and get angry too easily and so forth, well, maybe take some yoga, maybe learn some meditation,
Mm-hmm.
maybe learn to handle that anger better, and so on. Also, the way we look at things. I used to do a lot of work with parents. I've got several books on that topic as well. And in a nutshell, I used to say, the most valuable thing we parents can give to our kids is our time. Individual time.
Mm-hmm.
And parents go, oh, yeah, I agree with that. And I said, and then in light of that, when do most parents give their kids their individual time? Immediately following inappropriate behavior.
The correction.
Yes. So what are we teaching our kids? Okay.
I spend time with you and I'm going to correct you.
You're right. The best way to get mom or dad's attention is to misbehave. Okay?
Act a fool.
And
Yeah.
parents think their kids are, acting up, and they're bad or they're stubborn. From day one, they've learned the best way to get this valuable commodity, of attention, is to act up. Well, all right. With marriage, it's kind of the same. Think about it. What do we talk about often? Oh, you made a lovely roast tonight, dear. You're such a great cook, and so on and so forth. Well, that happens sometimes, but most of the time, what kind of feedback are we giving each other? We're focusing on the negative rather than on the positive. As I tell parents all the time, catch the kid when he's good. That's when you deposit your attention, that commodity, that valuable commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And in marriage, it's the same thing. Praise, encourage, and so on, not tear down, not criticize, and so on. So there's lots of things that we can do, to heal, to become more aware, to become more self-controlled,
Mm-hmm.
become more positive, and probably to make a better choice. Again, my experience is, seeing probably 1,000 couples in my time, is that either first, with the first marriage or subsequent marriages, is that you're in a relationship, too quickly. I can't tell you how many times when I'm doing marital therapy and we get back to talking about how they met and so forth, that they were in the sack by the first or second or third date. Well, okay, it's not like I'm a prude that sex is a great thing, but as far as I'm concerned, sex is the cherry on the top of the sundae. Okay, it's not the whole thing here. It's great that good sex can occur, and that's important, and we like that. But what about morality? And so, what about values? What about a similar goal and things of that nature? I can't tell you how many times I've worked with couples and I realize they haven't even talked about how they're going to parent. Dad believes in spanking and mom not.
Wow.
Well, that's a real problem. Plus, the kid is going to manipulate like.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. So on the flip side of that, how can men control or manage their loneliness and isolation? They go into that depression.
Well, again, recognize that, of course. Not do what's easy is knock off a six pack. That's frankly not going to help. It'll help for the moment, maybe, because it'll dull your feelings, but in the long term, you're just going to be more depressed. Is to recognize that this isn't useful, and get out there, join a group, a support group, and so on would be great. Go out with a friend. What's that?
Listen to a podcast.
Listen to a podcast. I get that. Right. Here you go. See, go out with a friend and so on. Go get a workout. Boy, I certainly recommend that. Yeah. Yeah. You've got to heal yourself, and so on. But, don't drug yourself and don't rush into another relationship. No, look, you can go out in a group and be social. I'm not saying you have to be an isolate for a year. I'm not saying that. I mean, you can go out, you can even have a date and so on. But your thinking is just we're going to be social here. We're not going to end up in bed and so on. Because once you start doing that, one of my articles that's on my website, topphoenixpsychologist.com, is what I call the pyramid. And at the top is the is sex and passion, but at the bottom, are the values and morals and things like that are important. But what we're doing is we're turning it upside down. Because once you start having sex, well, he drinks too much, but he's such a good lay, so the relationship starts moving forward, based on emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And next thing you know, you buy a sofa together. Okay. And now you got your money entwined. And before long, you're connected. Okay.
It all depends on when you buy the dog. You buy the dog, it's a done deal.
There. Dog together, but you never really talked about. Well, wait a minute, you're a big spender, and and your credit rating is in the toilet, and I'm not, money problems, or that's not going to work, and so on, and your mother, comes over without even being asked. That's not going to work, and so on, and and your brother's in prison, and wait a minute, what am I getting myself into? Well, that's now all an afterthought. You're already together.
Yep. So, what is the one piece of advice to close this up? What is one piece of advice that you give to men over 40 who feel stuck or unsure of how to move forward after their divorce?
I guess I have to say, seek some help. I know it's very tough for men, particularly, to see a counselor, but that's what they're for. That's what they're trained to do. It's not like you're getting married to them, if you will. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be long term, but get some help. If as we talked about a little bit before in our warm up, if your transmission is making a funny sound, you take it to a specialist, right? Well, you just broke up your primary relationship, and you're and you're down. Well, that's natural. Well, see a specialist.
Yep.
It's really, really important to do.
Well, Dr. Larry, you are one passionate guy. I appreciate it. This was fun, regardless of our technical difficulties, but we got through it. So I'll have to patch all these three pieces together. Let know people out there how to find you on the internet.
Well, my, again, website is topphoenixpsychologist.com. My email address is lfw, those are my initials, at larrywaldmanphd.com. I've got several books that are available on Amazon on parenting, who's raising whom, coping with your adolescent, how come I love him but can't live with him, too busy earning a living to make your fortune, again, love your child more than you hate your ex. And the book I just finished, this is now for seniors, is entitled Silver Sex: Insights into Senior Sexuality. And those books are certainly available. I'm also available if you're looking for a speaker and so forth. I present on lots of different topics to mental health associations and to the community as well.
All right, Dr. Larry, that was awesome. We will have that at the bottom of the show notes. But one question I have to ask about this gray divorce. Touch that up a little bit for me. Gray divorce.
Well, yeah, actually, I do touch on that in that last book. Gray divorce is a kind of a statistical phenomenon where boomers,
Yes,
uh,
boomers.
yeah, like us, are divorcing at a higher rate than ever before. And the reason, what's happening is that we are the first generation, now 70s and 80s, where we have more money than previous uh,
Hmm.
generations, and we typically are more active, and so on. And so what's happening is that we want we want to keep living and want to enjoy it. Well, in some cases, then, and you've been married by, like myself, you're married over a half century, and you take a look at him or her, he's got a belly out to here, and he can barely get out of the chair and whatever. And yeah, some people are saying, I only have a couple of years left. I want to make them good ones. And yeah, so
Yeah.
the divorce rate is amazingly high, and so on. What's also, since we're talking about rates, what also is interestingly, amazingly high in this age range, would you believe, are STDs.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's as high as the initial 18 to 25-year-old range. Because what's happening here is there are women are some of these, again, boomer women themselves are still vital. The old man, they dumped him, or he's died or whatever, because there are 25% more women in their 70s and 80s than there are men.
Yep.
So if you subtract that, because men die off sooner, as my dad used to joke a long time ago, the reason they die sooner is because they choose to. But that's just
Yeah. I think it's more women get sick first, but men die first.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. Well, so what happens is that so there are many more women, senior women than men to begin with, and then you have the men, who are committed to in their relationship. So there aren't that many men left who are available. And of those, how many then are vital? So you end up with a couple of guys who are vital, and it's like the bees going, pollinating all these various flowers.
Oh my God. All right, Doc. I appreciate your time. I'm going to have fun time editing this episode. So I got to piece it together. But hey, you take care out there in Arizona. We appreciate your time. But hold on the mic here.